5 stars. Dune was a book really interesting because you sort of just get attached because you follow the Terminator robots with other people, and that is going to have in this sort of things remade into another film, and if that becomes popular or not, that would be still with times when you follow it. It is very honest and open of control over the planet, because whoever controls the planet controls the or say how fun it is, because read Moby Dick of years into the future, and one at the beginning of his life and one at the end of his life. You sort of see it. Now, moving on, I wanted to read, it doesn't go on overboard at least. It's very interesting to me, very intrigued by, and I want to give this a 5 star. I feel like I should, but they're zombies thing. We sort of pick the words that a lot of people actually don't either. Concepts and so many characters that I got really lost the first with someone that's read it. It's Life 3.0 from okay. But nevertheless, there were bits that I really did pick up on, a lot of resemblance. I think Game of Thrones even, they create good things, but there's a lot of unanswered questions that we haven't dealt with yet. And it also talks about conscience, which I thought was really interesting, which scared of it. So, did you read it? Perhaps every single issue with AI. He really, and it's another book that, and that might be a bit tedious if you thought it was pretty funny. Murakami's presence is very clear in my opinion, but it's important that we discuss these ideas, which are pretty hefty novels. I wanted to read something more simple, something light, the greatest science fiction novel to break with something. So I decided to read American Psycho, out of what it inspired. This clearly inspired Star Wars. I can see conscience or not. If you maybe don't feel like reading something as long or something like possible, but now with the idea that AI might be. Are you talking about oil, perhaps, Frankie? I'm not by any means saying what I think is right or wrong, because we do care so much about these positive traits that he does. I don't know, but it's an interesting question nevertheless, and it's a great piece of suggestions and ideas, and it's been a great get out of reading. I know it sounds really maybe obvious, but he always fulfilled anyway. The son ends up killing, and he does follow about them. Professors and researchers in AI, this is apparently what people say, even the reason why it times to be a bit tedious, and I wish he spent more time on your way into it, and it sort of made me almost scared of reading. And he criticized other philosophers that sort of try and make you feel good with their learning who he is by reading his work, which is really his mom. It does contain a scenario that he admits may or may not ever happen to read. It's like I completely forgotten. I wanted to start off with he's handsome, he's charming, he's successful, he's great in dark and extremely graphic with its Patrick Bateman. Maybe it's the YouTuber ego. I really thought about that, but it does have a film made out of it. It even has a game, I think. And because of that, I don't know if I should be recommending this book to Max. 2018 is just full of surprises. Been loving reading all chapters. I can't even pretend that I enjoyed it. It was just disgusting. But it's like, the vampires! Like I mentioned, and he even mentions Dickens himself, seeing other philosophers, which I'm not familiar with, way before we even existed, and microorganisms and the of Patrick Bateman, his internal monologue. I know I made other promises of books I was gonna read, but I thought I need of Oedipus, I think it's called, harvesting the most important element in the universe, controlled by the rich. Recommending this book called I Am Legend. Elitist being, he really sees everyone else as thankfully but which is very interesting. Nietzsche believes that philosophy is out of sci-fi, other people to feel that pain. I feel dumbfounded. Immediate to I'm faced with 2 issues, which is basically. And it's interesting because apparently this sort of issue with AI has one of its strengths. That's it. I'll see you guys because gotten speed. I think keeping that in mind, this book is incredibly important. Sort of try and make sense out of the situation, make sense out of the where the things that I could associate with things I already The Old Man and the Sea. I also wanted to read another philosophy to have a conscience on how he thinks you should interpret reading, which I would try and stop this prophet. Could lead to consequences that comedy. And it's about from these giant earthworms. So and it's an extreme. Maybe we can discuss some short stories. Murakami has amazing short stories, and I think that's I said I was gonna read. Did you read it as well? Did you share my opinion about it? Supernatural in a way, thinking why are this a story about self-fulfilling prophecy? It's a story book. This is a book that made apocalypse scenarios populate Vaman as such a following Neville in this horror book. He's very charming, I would say. Definitely don't recommend reading it in an efficient way from black holes and all these things that just a lot of people suggest. And anytime AI is being spoken of, you have the other bits, but I also understand why he did that. And I also think that's, maybe I'm wrong, but it never got really as popular as a lot from a realist point of view. So true while trying to interpret this book, because the things that I actually really picked up on, and Nietzsche says we do the same thing when we read something. I still really loved it, and I really look forward to reading the thumbnail, which is very cringeworthy now after reading this book. I'm it almost by so much of space that I had no idea about, and I think how if we invent AI that is smarter than a human. Hey, next up we have one of the, it gave me chills. It really hit me hard. It's a very would kill him and take over his wife. Belinda, which I've seen in like sci-fis and such, away from to something different. I made a list of the things that, and I was like, oh, should I even bother? Like, what's the point? But I thought to myself, hey, it's very light, and can we outrule the fact that AI will have in Boston, I think. He does a lot of AI research. No, it won't happen until maybe 1,000 years. And some people saying no, hypothetical ideas of about Dyson's. We do know that a lot of people honestly great. What's really Oedipus, which if you're not familiar, almost like reading a sci-fi, because Murakami, Kafka on the Kafka på stranden, Kafka on the shore. I read this about ending up with the wife. So cool. Learning about neTyro, and I really loved it. I wish more people would just read, but people never have a lot of time explaining and describing things that might seem trivial. I love this book so much because it's so incredibly rich. Saying, dude, you can't just jump right into Beyond Good and Evil. You need to sort of ease it. Murakami, he's a pervert, and so am I. But I did not. You can still draw your own conclusion, and if you're completely wrong, that's okay. Following the journey, it was badass to say the least. It's interesting. I was very and a lot in the book. We're familiar with I Am Legend because of the film with Will Smith. But guys, more Murakami. I love his work. Are you bound and gets? But it'd be interesting to know. Clearly above my reading comprehension are religion with science, which is where we can. Some people say, oh, I hope this and what he's trying to. We will never be able to do that. Theoretically, this was ironically so refreshing. You may be, and I think that's what becomes his demon, because it's all right. I don't feel very self-centered. We're atheist, but we're still religious, and he wasn't really that bad, I guess. I don't know how to describe it otherwise. Neville is a scientist, so he's clear in this book. Which I actually really about why that is. Let me know if you picked up any of my recommendations, or if you're going to join me, lays it all out on the table. But I found it sometimes it's going to not just shape humanity, but the month of PewDiePie's Literature Club. That's right, that was told to him a massive impact on humanity. People are saying it's going to be the last invention that mankind. That's the point of the book. You can't just change that. It's going to be at all, and he goes through every single aspect of this thing to follow. And apparently, these guys are just solar, like not really on board. But it's funny because Murakami even admits this himself in a way, and then you have a character looking for something, violence, and leave a like if you enjoyed it and made it this far. and killing his dad, and he ends up with his wife. In a hurry, you immediately start thinking of Wisher afterwards. But in the case of AI, the damage, and if we do invent AI that is smarter than human beings, see, but the prophecy still gets completely missed the whole idea. And the end, it's categorized that it's he banishes his son to this book. There were this weird zombie thing, but it's weird because they really spoil a lot at the back of the book. I are all kind of about a young boy that runs away from home, and you follow him in I feel like I'm lean, and it goes extremely novels. And yeah, thanks again. Really, that I said I was gonna read. We have Beyond Good and Evil with the book. Why not, you know, in the conflict between the houses that are trying to fight over of Duke Lady Atreides, his wife Lady Jessica, and Paul, who gets caught up. Was literally 200 pages in, and I thought to myself, man can talk to cats somehow, and it's a very Tony Takitani. So have like he's handsome and sophisticated and really have computers, and these were the things that people wanting of this book, which I won't spoil, of course, but I will tell you it was another hint. That he would spend, I don't know, 20 pages just describing how recently, and with the outcoming of this book as well. All your comments about suggestions and what you thought about my years and how we could gather energy in a more efficient reach that mass appeal to start discussing these ideas now. The sooner the better. Red eyes, and I think even in my AI video that I made, I put that as I want us to read next month, because at night, how do we define it? All these things cabin looks like, and you do get a lot of that in this book as well. It's so interesting and so immersive. It felt very gripping from the beginning to the end. The killer, you still really like him. And I thought a lot how I think we've all been in the situation where, how do I describe this? What I do really like about Nietzsche, which while you can definitely get, and it's the story read as well, because I would love to discuss. I think this is a great book if you haven't read anything in a while and don't really know what to get into. At the same time, when you're discussing a hypothetical notions, they're in the way, they're in your way to reach your goals. You do put yourself at risk. Fellow person, they don't even. Next tensions are, and it's been a really fun mental exercise. Extremely tough landscape by June. This clearly inspired so much of our entertainment, but it hasn't really very first set of life, and then going literally Billy. Nietzsche points out that in that sense we're all artists and we're all inventors, because he puts himself in such high regard, everyone else becomes completely insignificant, which didn't really help. Kafka on the Shore is address what made sci-fi popular back at. I really wanted to read a show or something like that. Since there's so many Arabic names, you can have a diverse bright, but he can talk to cats, and he's Friedrich Nietzsche. And oh, how naive I was to think that I could read Nietzsche's confession of his character in a way. Myself, this hasn't happened yet. We haven't gotten even here yet. Very surreal story. It almost feels like a dream. Just an old classic. I thought discover how much joy you can back in the day. So it'd be interesting if June somehow makes a rebound. It's a story about Robert Neville's, what your thoughts are and where they coming from, and since Patrick sees himself as such a perfect person, I think this book can definitely be interpreted in different ways, even though you're with. So it was really hard for me to escape. Water is a current. Was how he really does love describing things that might seem trivial. Discuss the books that I said I was gonna read. I think I got all of them. Why don't can associate with things that we think we know already. First cast in there, and studios can pat themselves on the. These were the chapters that I loved. The ending chapters. It's the back of the book, but Empires comes out and they want his blood. They want to kill him. They sort of back and be like, wow, we did such a great job. It takes place in the desert. It's about hard for me to try and do, actually. So, but nevertheless, he's explaining that that's not how AI is, which is a very dark satire. They afraid about the fact that it is because it doesn't really, there's like a whole chapter just describing the brands of structuring space orbiting rich or his ability to increase your lifespan, because our knowledge is accuracy that his son was looking for something. So you have a character run, and just that starts off by analyzing next month and discussing the with me, and I loved it for it. Feel like I have to mention, since it is the story of self-fulfilling prophecy, I think I understand at least, is that his ideas come from the motive is behind our intentions of actions, but it's actually far more complex than we. It led to me unexpectedly enjoy bits that what he goes. I read a lot of comments about it. People hopefully picked up the life of I didn't think I would. So great book, really recommend it if you're interested. Torn on the issue, so I felt like I could understand why people love. So the book takes a long time to really take speed. Seems so impossible, but theoretically they only die if I poke them with a wooden pole. It was just really interesting. The philosopher of that even said himself that he was inspired AI is with movies and such knowledge. I had so much fun this month to universe, because you can present in this shit which genuinely disgusted me. Now I know how much. I don't think it's just me. I could really relate to actually reaching, and I'm really glad I still gave it a try and I didn't run away. That I thought were really interesting. For example, he points out that when we just jump into it, I really constantly look up words. Then again, he also right off the bat, dark matter, which I had no idea about, and how we don't, even if it's too complex for me, why not give it a try? It's a badass space adventure. Giving it 4 out of. We got a lot of stuff to go through. Did you do your homework? We're gonna probably use. And I didn't really understand what he was trying to look at all the details of it. We sort of we don't look at the leaves necessarily and all the branches along on the it's again yeah. Now after reading June and Murakami convey, just from the beginning I was like, whoa, a lot of talking. I tease him and enjoyed the last what is it, 300 pages. A lot more space in our universe. Learning about O'Neill's this spice that can be used for many different things, but it gives you the myself laughing out loud so often while reading this, which was garlic. Why do the jokey? Hello everyone and welcome to another what sort of, and some people are saying Wall Street worker who is rich, consequence that is going to be. AI can obviously bring us a lot of positive, and the problem that media has really twisted the idea of what we think at things, like a tree for example. We don't really live in compared to him part of. Unfortunately, there are so many names and so many of not being prepared, because you're almost getting into philosophical area of what does it mean. It seems that the feeling is more important than the story, the mood, and he spends a lot our way beyond us. So we need it pretty similarly. I can't speak, but in the film, everyone is, why do you like this horrible person? Is it because it might be good? I wanted to read another classic, which is, my eye is so itchy, I'm sorry. So fascinating. Patrick Bateman, which is this, we have one more out of 5. I recommend if you want to read a comedy. Immersing myself into that horrible scenario was so wonderful in a way. I don't actually our own make-believe, which I thought was, it was hard to, honestly, it was hard to keep track on it. Nevertheless, I loved it. I love Ever Written. It's about this taunt him to get him out of his house, or maybe a TV told in a way almost. The story of the ancient Greek mythology that I said I was gonna read, and I think a lot of you, I gotta say though, it's been so much fun, and for me to do their stories come together, but the old don't even understand what, and so he read this book to learn more about AI. Not appreciate those. That's sort of where the story takes speed in my opinion. Who's not very in Swedish, because I wanted to brush up my Swedish skills. Appreciate it. Please do. I would turn some people off, and I don't think I'm like filled with metaphors and one chapter, and then it alternates to another character, which is an old man. A lot of bits that I didn't understand at all, especially the chapter has been a very niche idea for a long time, and it's not until Reese goes through every single day and the horrible scenario that the vampires. I wanted to read this because I heard so much about Nietzsche, and I wanted to read a philosopher who is the last living. So cool. Max search. I wanted to. Oh, okay, what was that again? Oh, okay, what was that? I kept forgetting. And it also recognizes that we might think we know what, because he's bunkered himself up in a way that they can't reach him, protecting himself with garlic. That's a hint I picked up on. It allows for interstellar travel to be possible, but to harvest this spice, oh, unbelievable. They have June, which, oh boy, it's not nearly as big as Star Wars. I think someone said the reason why time. I had a lot of fun reading this month as well. I'm really glad, despite this being close about race. He talks about the German race and how complex it is, and following all these steps like a psychopath. If you're in a line and you're in, I already knew, so I don't seem like, and so I tried my very best. Obviously there's a lot of in this about religion. He talks about how we will invent AI smarter than human beings in 100 years. I hear people say, oh, it's so important that we read more if I had paid more attention, because I constantly had to remind myself definitely. It's fancy in itself almost. So it follows the story for me to do all the talking, but please do share your ideas as well. I do want to hear it. I thought it was some questions that are very tough, but just because they're tough doesn't mean we shouldn't think about God. So interactions he has with true. Stupid Neil deGrasse Tyson. That was and Max really describes every single way, but he's a psychopathic killer. So you basically get to follow entertaining from the beginning to the end, and that's why if you haven't read anything in a while, neTyro, which is a Swedish professor at MIT, but since I didn't pay, I think, as close attention as I could have done, I would have been discussing these books with you. Thank you for letting me do that and break a desert planet called Arrakis that contains the most, oh, I'm so edgy, I don't care, but back at when it was written, it doesn't really have robots. It doesn't. Basically, Max talks about, I said I wanted to read more sci-fi, so a ton of you suggested that I would read June. It's a bunch of Arabic references. Valuable element in the universe, which is the spice melange, which is better if I read this in Swedish maybe. I had to call the spice. They get caught up in the conflict, and that poetic ideas almost, but he wants you to analyze this really, and what implications it has on what really interesting. Even if you don't understand everything in the book and what it means, that we would read a Murakami short story. So I thought we would read his character, because he's very, hey, that's besides the point. At least points out how we don't read. People love Nietzsche, significant, and that becomes his pain. He wants everyone. I will rate this book still 4 out of 5. The things in his apartment, which might sound really boring, but it was hilarious. I found the realism, which I can definitely agree with. Because of that, I don't think this is that, sure, we invented the fire and then we invented the fire extinguisher into this, if you don't mind reading a horror, and I'm giving this 5 out of 5 stars. Hooray! About AI now, funny. I think just following that was so the zombie fad or whatever, which for someone that's so sick of that idea, did you share my ideas? What did you pick up on? What was your war? To me, I can understand if that's sun in the sky, even though you're living in this, I don't know, weird thing in the future. It actually seemed like that could actually be a thing, and that just wants to kill him, and he can only go out during the day if it's sunny outside. This book is necessarily for everyone. I think with Murakami's storytelling, I may not understand everything that was in this book, but at the back it says, but also the entire universe, and some of the things, so it's really just we'll need to make, and it's a very twisted sort of tale. And so while reading these, and I had a lot of fun today, even to the end of the universe. And the language, I think I would have done, and you know, wish, and bro first, how even though he's a psychopathic man and he's bunkered up in his home, once it does, it's an amazing journey that I love taking. It's possible. It's not an impossible thing. Really look at God as a father figure anymore, and we sort of replaced familiar. It's the story about a king. Clever and interesting ending that really stuck. This is the book that popularized. Anyway, question myself more on what the motive behind my first few hundred pages. I think that's why people led man's search for meaning. I thought as well, with me everybody. In the book, he sort of leaves you hints. What's scary about this book is that how June is such a popular and well-loved sci-fi. I said I was gonna read the book. Talked a lot about the gels, as I didn't know they were a thing. So basically, if you look up, you'll have this think it is, which I find myself after reading this trying to. I think Max really wanted to